evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Shadows Maw. I am your host, Marcus Shadow. You might be wondering why this is up here again. Why we're doing Star Trek 3 again. Well, because we did this last night. It didn't turn out very well. We decided to do it again because we wanted to bring you better content and a better video. And this is supposed to be a tribute to the late, great Leonard Nimoy. Here's our little tribute video. May he rest in peace. And so we thought, yeah. And so I'll leave that up on my image for the duration of the review. And so we thought we should structure the review a little bit better. And we have a different image. For those of you who saw our previous one, you'll notice this is a much better image. Credit to the Mole for this image. Thank you, Mole.
And a pleasure.
Yes. And of course, as you heard, joining me, of course, is Chriz the Mole and James Phoenix.
Hi.
And thank you. I would also like to throw out, for the record, as we were going to mention, it's a tribute to Leonard Nimoy, but the fact we don't like this film doesn't hurt the fact we did like the guy. I will throw that out now, in case people think, why are you disrespecting the film he directed with an image posted of him? It's like, no, it's because we're looking at the film as a film, not using the film as sort of like, oh, well, we can't touch it because it was directed by him. We're still, any faults we have still remain, but we still like the guy.
Mm.
Indeed.
Now, that's not to say when we get in the future, there won't be some discussion of people whose work is shit because of who they are. We'll get to William Shatner's body of work later.
Hey, he was great in WWE.
True, I do have his album, Shatner sings WWE theme songs.
Oh, I was about his first appearance. I remember him in his first appearance feuding with Jerry Lawler-ish. That was kind of fun. I just don't know why those two together were just awesome.
I don't remember that, but that does sound old.
It was old. It was during like the Bret Hart era. It was so long. It was long ago enough that I was alive during it, was able to watch it, but not so new that William Shatner could still sport a leather jacket and his hair and stuff he looked cool.
Ah, nice. I said they renewed that feud now. It'll be a race to who can have a heart attack first.
Yep.
Indeed, but as Mole mentioned, Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock was in fact directed by the late Leonard Nimoy, not one of his best works, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, as much as we love Leonard Nimoy, he's no two takes freaks.
I will make the case it may have been directed by Leonard Nimoy, however the problems may also be in the writing, because a lot of the plot is really fucking bad. A lot of the plot, characterizations, and everything about the film is bad, so it's like, I don't blame him for directing as much. I mean, some of the shots looked great, to a certain degree, but it was just bad as a film.
True.
Yep.
But yes, the stars of this movie, aside from the classic cast, of course, that came back, they all came back. We have returning Lieutenant Saavik, but this time played by Robin Curtis, who I think, no offense to Kirstie Alley, I think does a better job than Kirstie Alley.
She does a better job with the fact how the character is, due to, we mentioned in the last film, in a deleted scene, you were supposed to find out she was half Romulan or whatever it was, which makes perfect sense for the version that was played in that film. However, she does a better job with the pure Vulcan, but that makes the character seem so different.
Well, that's not Saavik. You're thinking of T'Pol from Enterprise.
No, that was Saavik. We mentioned that in the last.
Okay, because T'Pol is supposed to be revealed to be half Romulan too.
Yeah, but they mentioned the reason she was acting more human, for lack of a better term, in the second film, or how she was more emotional in the second one, was because she was actually meant to be a half-breed, which would explain the acting choices.
That makes sense.
But the scene was cut because they were like, no one really cares. It's like, yes, we do.
Yeah. But, and we have playing our main villain, Commander Chriz of the Klingon Empire, Christopher Lloyd. pre Back to the Future. This came out before Back to the Future, but it did come out after One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which, yeah, going from that to this, I understand going into Star Trek, Chris, was probably a good idea, but this movie, yeah.
Yeah, it's not his best work.
No, I mean, I enjoyed him as Commander Cruz, but yeah, no.
Oh, I think he did the best with what he was given.
Mm-hmm.
However, what he was given was really horrible.
Right. And the other special guest star here that you may recognize, the only other one I would recognize, is John Larroquette, who played Moltz, which I believe he was the sole Klingon survivor of that ship.
He might have been.
He may have been.
I believe that was John Larroquette. I could be Moltz. Yeah. So that's it for the stars. I just wanted to mention them and get them out of the way there. And yeah,
But it's
so
Star Trek. It's going to be filled with stars.
So I'm going to quickly go through the plot here, the story, and then we'll talk about the movie. So basically, this takes place immediately following the Wrath of Khan. The movie actually starts recounting the death of Spock, and then really begins pretty much at his funeral, where the torpedo thing, his torpedo casket is shot to Genesis, and the movie literally picks up there with Kirk and crew heading home, and Kirk finding McCoy in Spock's quarters.
And can I just say, because I didn't get to mention this last time,
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't mention it, recapped his death last time, we just mentioned it started from the funeral. I would like to point out, when it starts with his death and we see it, that was a weird fucking choice. I don't know if it was...
That was.
Because for those of you wondering, it starts as a tiny little square, but then the square itself has effects over it to look old, so you can tell it's the past. Just make that shit full screen. There was no reason for this choice. It was a really poor choice. It looked like a Windows Movie Maker film, and that's not to say because so the timing they had technology. This is after Star Wars. It's after Alien. It's after Terminator probably, and stuff. It's after a load of great films that didn't do tiny little square.
Yeah, and then it zoomed in or zoomed. Yeah, and zoomed toward the screen, which. Yeah, they probably did it for the effect, and it didn't work. I didn't like that effect either. What did you think, Jim, about that effect?
Yeah, that wasn't a very good effect.
Yeah. So, yeah, saying Kirk finds McCoy in Spock's quarters, which, for some reason in the 23rd century, they still use yellow police tape. I don't know how the hell that works. I thought that stuff would have been obsolete like several thousand years ago, but okay. But yeah, Spock's room is cordoned off by yellow police tape, which is broken by McCoy. And you find that, you find out a little bit later what's going on, but it's basically Spock's katra, or the remnants of his mind, his memories and what personality and whatnot have been implanted into McCoy via Spock. Via the remember, and then he does the mind meld to McCoy before he goes and commits suicide. And so he thinks he's Spock half the time. Which you find out a lot about that later when they get to Space Dock and Sark shows up. But while they're en route to Earth, you also see a Klingon ship commanded by Commander Cruz, Christopher Lloyd, come in contact with a little freighter ship, and they get some data from must be when I'm leaning back. I don't know why. But
they get some data.
Yeah, they get data from. Well, he gets data basically from his lover, it looks like, or wife or mate or whatever, because he calls him, my love or something like that. But it's a report made by James T. Kirk about the Genesis device, which I have to question the existence of said report, because as I pointed out at the beginning of this review, it literally picks up at the end of Wrath of Khan, so there was literally no time for Kirk to have actually made the report. So in other words, they don't establish within the movie how this report even exists. And the fact that the woman on the ship, she says something along the lines like she acquired it from some like black market on some other planet. So there had been enough time for this report to not only exist, but then to be bootlegged into the black market, so then she could then get it on this data pad and then get it to the commander. I'm like, I don't think that much time has passed.
Yep. I will say during that sentence, it was a lot worse, the bleeping I messaged you about. But I will say, yeah, like I mentioned in the last one, this film just seems to make shit up. Doesn't seem to fit a load of continuities and stuff like that because of various issues, in my opinion at least. And like we mentioned last time, completely underdoes everything good about the second film.
Yes, oh yes, we will be getting to that. But so Chriz takes possession of the data, the log, then proceeds to blow up the other ship because there can be no witnesses, there can be no survivors. And he's like, I must have Genesis! To the Genesis planet! And he goes off to the Genesis planet. Meanwhile, on Earth, McCoy, who half thinks he's Spock, tries to get to Vulcan, while Sarek goes to visit Kirk, thinking Kirk has Spock's Katra, which he doesn't. And Sarek mind mails with Kirk, finds out he does not have the Katra. And Kirk finds out, hey, it's McCoy who has it. Because apparently the Enterprise had security cameras and he could just go watch the feed, or they spaceballs it. I'm just going to go watch the second movie. He's like, it must be Bones. Bones has the Katra. So he goes and gets Bones. And at this point, the Enterprise has been taken away from Kirk because it's found out that, the Enterprise isn't getting retrofitted, it's getting decommissioned.
Logically speaking, wouldn't he have thought it must be Bones or whatever, because the way it sounded, Spock would do that to people he was really close to, and as we've mentioned, and as you mentioned in the past on the second one, one of the dynamics is Bones, Kirk, Spock. So if it's not, if it can't be Spock because he's dead, and it can't be Kirk because he doesn't have it, process of elimination.
True.
Logically speaking, no.
Logically speaking, yes, but in movie continuity, he doesn't realize until he sees the footage of Remember, and he's like, oh, Spock touched Bones, therefore Bones must have Spock's mind.
Yep, he's rewinding the camera, which happens to have the exact same camera shot as us watching the film, which is weird. Who knew that Star Trek 2 was found footage?
That too. And also, if you think about it, well, the other thing too is, now that you mention that, Mole, you said, as you mentioned, they used the footage from the second movie. If you think about it, that's not where the security camera should be placed. They really have a security camera on a pole in the middle of the fucking room? Really?
Yep.
That doesn't make sense. It should be like up on a wall somewhere aimed down, but no, it's perfectly placed so you can see Spock dead on.
That's because it's in the future, and we know all about how big social media is now. Imagine it in years' time. There's a member of the crew who's always walking around with a camcorder because he wants to update his blog. OMG, just found out I'm getting a red shirt, sad face.
There you go. So, Kirk has to bust McCoy out of, was it like a jail or like a mental institution or something? Because McCoy tries to gain passage to Vulcan, makes a fool of himself, and basically gets arrested by like the Federation FBI people. I can't remember if it was a jail or if it was like a mental institution type thing, but he gets the crew of the Enterprise back together. They go bust McCoy out, and they head off to the Genesis planet after stealing the Enterprise. I also do have to say I love how Scotty sabotaged the Excelsior. I thought that was hilarious.
Yep. I believe last time Jim mentioned he just knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as they were flying away and went on, the ship started chasing them. I'm like, okay, Scotty was on that ship. He obviously knew about this plan with the others. There's no way he was going to let them get followed. He was the engineer. He did something. And I was waiting for him to say go to warp and the whole thing to stall out. And sure enough, boom.
Yep.
See, logically, what he could have done if he's an engineer and can rewire the ship, in my opinion, is do the opposite-ish.
Oh?
Make the warp stuff work, but mess up the coordinate, so when they type in a coordinate to warp 2, it takes them to the other side of the galaxy.
Yeah, but I don't think that would have worked as well as stalling it, because if you think about it, transwarp is supposed to be so fast that even if he did that, once they figured out how to put in the correct coordinates, they'd be on the Enterprise like in 5 seconds.
That is also true. And
besides, the way Scotty sabotaged the ship is he literally took parts out of the engine. So yeah, they can't even get the ship to run until they get replacement parts from like the shipyard.
Yep, and that's weird. That on here, Jim has the exact same image as you.
Why?
Oh, I see. He's using the image that I sent to him. Cool. Without the text. Nice.
So it's the mirrored image. Fair enough.
No, he's flipped it.
Oh, he flipped it.
Actually, yeah, that's the version that Mole sent me, because I don't have the words, so I just have the pictures. And unfortunately, because I'm using the overlay, not Minicam, and the top's cut off a little bit, but...
Also, Marcus, you can tell that's not the mirrored version, or the Spocks would have goatees.
That's true.
But yeah, so they make their way to the Genesis planet in the crippled Enterprise because it's still damaged from Star Trek II. And at that point, Chriz makes it to Genesis and ends up destroying the science vessel that's there, taking a look at Genesis because they realize shit's wrong. So the only surviving crew members of that ship are Lieutenant Savick, played by Robin Curtis, and Dr. David Marcus, son of James T. Kirk, who are on the planet, surveying the planet because, David Marcus is one of the scientists who created Genesis, so he'd be, the logical choice to actually send down there to say, hey, Doc, what the fuck is wrong with your experiment?
Yeah, the idiot that replaced the matter with proto-matter and basically built a planet-sized bomb.
Pretty much, which we find out in this one.
It's cool. No one's perfect.
Although, I would say, would that make him any better than the guy he resurrected? Lest we forget, Spock is the idiot who decided to use red matter and created a black hole that shunted him into the past.
I would make the case he didn't resurrect him. The planet resurrected him.
True.
Agreed.
But is he worse than the planet? I don't know. The planet, as we'll get to in a sec, does have conveniently placed rocks that launch enemies into heroes.
True.
It does.
True. But yes, so Chriz then sends a couple of officers down to the planet, who then capture the two Starfleet officers and the resurrected Spock, who is going through an aging process. We see through the course of the movie, about 4 or 5 different Spocks, including Nimoy at the end, to show the different ages of Spock as he's growing up.
Which I still stand by the fact he didn't age because of the planet. Like I mentioned in the past, look at his coffin. It's a suspension capsule from Thundercats. Jarga clearly says some aging does take place.
Ha! Funny.
I just wanted to include the joke that it looked like the Thundercats suspension capsule. It has no merit whatsoever. But it really did. And
but it really did.
It really did, and the Klingon ship really did look like the mutant ship.
It did. It did. The Bird of Prey? Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would also like to point out at this juncture that Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, I believe, is the Star Trek entity that introduced the concept of Ponfar, the Vulcan, puberty, basically.
It may be. I'm not entirely sure.
It's not really puberty. It's just an aspect that Vulcans go through as part of being adult Vulcans. Is every 7 years they go through a Ponfar where they have to mate. It's just part of their species to make sure the species continues to procreate.
Yeah, which I was going to say, it might be. I'm not entirely sure. I know Jim might look it up later. I'm not entirely sure, but I know some of the Vulcan rituals and stuff like that that were used in the movies came from the animated series. So I don't know if that was made for this or the animated series.
Fair enough.
Like the ceremony in the second one that Spock goes through came from the animated series. So I'm not sure if this one did.
Oh, the merging of the mind with the body ceremony?
The one where he has like the robe, the cool ass robes and stuff.
Oh, that
on
one.
the planet.
Yeah. The pure logic ceremony. Yeah, fair enough. No, where he's like, I can't do this because I'm feeling emotion and I must seek out what's causing this emotion. Yeah.
Yep.
Fair enough.
As opposed to the puberty, who's like, I'm feeling emotion in my pants. I must find out what's causing my emotion in my pants.
But yeah, because Spock ages, he has to go through Ponfar, and plot convenience, we have a female Vulcan just happens to be on the planet with him. So yeah, guess who he makes out with?
Yeah, which I have to say is still really weird, like when they're doing the hand rubbing and stuff like that, looking into each other's eyes, because I understand, technically speaking, Spock's older, but this is revitalized Spock. It's almost pedophilic because of her age and his age at the time in which they're doing it. A load of the stuff, it seems weird to me. I don't know why, it just seems off-putting.
I could see that. I could understand that. But yeah, so they capture them. The Enterprise gets there and finds out that the Federation has been trying to contact the ship that was there, failing, of course, because the ship no longer exists. So they try to contact the ship and also fails. And not once does Kirk think, hey, you know what? They're not responding to either the Federation or me. Maybe there's something wrong. No, I'm just going to keep transmitting on standard wavelength so that if just so happens there's someone who destroyed that ship, they'll know that I'm coming too. It's like, yeah, brilliant, Kirk. Just announce to the galaxy, hey, Admiral Kirk is on his way.
Yep. Well, you could make the case that because it's so soon after Spock's death, he may not have been in the right mind frame for some stuff.
True.
This is very true. I'm not entirely sure about that, because he basically, after he mourned Spock's death, he got over it really fast and seemed to act exactly like Kirk whenever the script demanded it.
This is true, to a degree. But yeah, so he gets there, and of course the Bird of Prey's cloaked, so they don't see it. And
well, yeah, no one does it better than the Birds of Prey.
There you go. And then they get assaulted, of course, by the Bird of Prey, and the Bird of Prey being a fresh ship compared to the Enterprise, who was only like maybe a third working because, again, Khan pretty much crippled the ship. The ship gets entirely crippled to the point that Kirk is forced to surrender the ship to Chriz, who sees completely through his bluffs because Kirk tries to talk him out of it. And it's like, you will leave or we'll destroy you. And Chriz is like looking at it like, yeah, bullshit, your ship doesn't work. And he's like, damn it, okay, fine. And then, of course, Chriz also he pulls out the we have prisoners card of, showing who he's got. Well, not showing, but allowing Kirk to speak with the people on the planet, and that's when he realizes, oh, fuck, he's got my son. And Spock, of course. And he's like, just so we're clear, Admiral Kirk, so we're clear that I'm deadly serious, I'm going to execute one of one of the prisoners now. And if you fail to comply, I will execute another one in, I don't know, like some minutes or something. He's like, no, wait, we can talk about these. He's like, nope, I'm going to execute someone now. And he orders someone down on the planet to execute someone. And they choose Saavik. And David Marcus jumps in the way, and he's the one that ends up getting executed. And thus we get the infamous line from Captain Kirk, "You Klingon bastard, you've killed my son."
Which I still make the case of, he's only known him like, what, a couple of days in continuity. He didn't spend much time with him on screen, and when he did, he always seemed really dismissive. I don't know, that just seems off. That just seems off and contrived.
I can understand that. And so he's like, all right, you win. I'll surrender the ship. And then he proceeds to set the self-destruct and beams the hell off the ship while the Klingon crew beams on the ship. And with the bulk of the Klingon crew on the ship, the Enterprise goes up in a ball of fire, while Kirk and crew escape to the planet. And then Chriz, of course, completely pissed off, goes down to the planet after Kirk takes out the 2 Klingon crew members down on the planet and saves Saavik and Spock. And, of course, they find out, Genesis is crumbling, it's degrading, we need to get off the planet. Spock's aging is tied to the planet. If he stays on the planet, he's probably going to die with the planet. If we want to save his body, we need to get him off the planet. It's like, okay. And Chriz comes down, and Kirk tries to convince Chriz to beam everyone off the planet. And he's like, I will beam them all up to my ship as prisoners, except for the Vulcan in the robe on the ground, wailing like a baby. Why? Because you wish it! So he's going to stay. It's like, okay, so the Klingon's actually kind of smart, which I'm like, I kind of like this. He's got some moments where it's like, okay, he's actually intelligent, but he doesn't act much like a Klingon in most other respects. And so they beam them up, the entire crew, except for Spock and Kirk. And Kirk and Chriz proceed then to have big fuck-off fight on the planet, which then we have Deus Ex Rock launching Chriz at Kirk. And the planet continues to crumble, and Kirk continues to say, you idiot, look around you, the planet is crumbling, we need to get off this planet or we're both going to die. And he's like, I don't care, I want Genesis.
Yeah, to which Chriz responds, have you not seen Dragon Ball Z when Namek's blowing up? We have weeks.
And so the planet begins to crumble, an earthquake, and they both go flying and rolling, and Chriz ends up going over the edge and grabs onto Kirk's leg, and you get the other rather infamous scene, I have had enough of you, where Kirk kicks him down into CG lava planet core.
Pretty much.
And then he calls for a beam up in Klingon, not knowing if his crew managed to take over the Klingon bird of prey. And he gets beamed up, finds out there was only one crew member left on the bird of prey, and the crew managed to subdue said crew member, who I believe is John Lorcat. And he's all like, kill me now, let me die with honor. And Kirk's like, I'll kill you later. And then flies off in the bird of prey as Genesis explodes.
No, Kirk is like, tell us how to fly this thing and get us out of here. And they do, and they get him out of there. He tells them what's going on. They get him out of there, and he's like, all right, put him in the brig. You said you would kill me. I lied.
No, he asked him to fly them out of there, and he refused. He's like, I'd rather die. Let me die with honor. He's like, I'll kill you later. And then Scotty, Chekhov, and Sulu try to figure out how to fly, and this guy's like, I think it's this one here, and hits the button, boom, warp speed. And they fly out. He's like, all right, now I'll take him to the brig. He's like, I thought you said you were going to kill me later. He's like, I lied.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think you'll find he says, take us home. He asks the Klingon nicely. The Klingon goes, okay, fine, but I get to touch the radio, and he hits the button, and the song from Flight of the Navigator plays, and they live happily ever after.
That would be hilarious. yeah, so they fly off to Vulcan in a bird of prey. And we have the ritual of some rare ritual that allows them to take Spock's mind out of McCoy and put it back into Spock's body. They get Spock back, and everyone's happy. And as it says at the end of the movie, the adventure continues.
Yep. Which, yeah, like I said, not a good film. As was touched upon now, and I know Mark has mentioned some of my complaints and stuff, but it makes, like I mentioned in the past, it looks like Spock had an out because of the whole remember, and it's like that's the only reason he was willing to sacrifice himself, which cheapens his death. Then they brought him back in a really contrived way, again cheapening the death. And then you have the Klingon guy who's a complete step down to the previous villain, because like I mentioned, he doesn't do anything good in this film. Everything just falls into his lap. The only remotely good thing he does is, like Marcus says, aha, because you wish it. But that's just like a child of, I'm not going to give you this ball. Why not? Because you want to play with it. Haha. It's like pathetic. It's a complete step down from Khan in every way. Even The Rock. The Rock launches him directly at Kirk. He doesn't even start the fight. And he's meant to be a Klingon and easily loses to Kirk. And I know plot convenience with rolling or whatever, but still, come on. The Klingon on the ship doesn't act like a Klingon. It underdoes everything about the second film. I'm not mentioning James's complaint, because I know James had one with something they erased from the second film as well. But they erased everything good about the second film. And this film itself is just really boring, contrived, plot conveniency, and it was just horribly made. This film is just horrible all around.
Actually, I think the best thing that Chriz does is when he sees right through Kirk's bluff. He's one of the very few Star Trek villains that's actually able to just see through Kirk's bluffs. It's just like, no, I think you should fall off.
I didn't hear any of that. That was just loud buzzing.
That sucks. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I heard he sees through Kirk's bluff because he's like, and then as you started to say what he was like, it's just...
Oh. Yeah, because he's like... Because Kirk is trying to bluff his way out, and he's just like, nope, I think your ship is crippled, fuck the hell off. It's just like, he's one of the very few Star Trek villains that actually sees through Kirk's bluffs. Most Star Trek villains that Kirk goes against don't see through his bluffs.
Most of them don't if it's like a one-episode thing. If it's a two-part episode, they normally do. Or if it's a villain that they want to be pretty established, like in the movies, they pretty much do. Like Khan saw through some of his bluffs. And it's just, you know what I mean? It's like, this nothing about this villain's good. Like I said, it's just a waste of Christopher Lloyd, in my opinion, but...
A little bit,
if he had fun with it, I know, it was kind of cool, and... Star Trek was one of the properties of the 80s, I suppose, but it's just like, come on, this film, it's so bad. Like I said in the last one when I gave it a rating, I'd put this down as a firm avoid. It's not even worth watching, because if you do, it just hurts the second film. I rate it lower than Nemesis, and we know how much Nemesis sucks.
Jim, comments?
I'm good for right now.
But it's the time where we're supposed to be speaking, Jim.
I'm surprised you didn't bring up your rebuttal to Mul's thing.
You're right. The point of Mo made, and he's right about some of the stuff being erased in the second movie, I felt like particularly the central message that they seem trying to get across in the second movie, they erased, because the message in the second movie was basically the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, and that basically sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good. And then they come out with this movie, and, okay, they circumvented it a little bit, and they went and got Spock, which I would have been okay with that. Like, okay, they put a lot against Spock to their friend, I wasn't okay with it. If William Shatner didn't come outright and say, in this case, the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. It's like, no, don't rub it in the audience, just face it, you just shitted all over the previous movie. What the fuck?
Yep. That's pretty much as bad as in DMC, where not Dante has a white wig on, and it's like, nope, can you imagine that? And just throw it to the floor. It's like, really? Why would you do this?
Yeah.
Because he's Dante.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, Jim. I was thinking you'd mentioned too your rebuttal to Mole's thing about Kirk or not Kirk Spock basically sacrificing himself because he has an out.
Oh, well, I don't think it's just an out. I think that it's typically just a Vulcan tradition that they perform the mind meld to leave their contra behind when they know they're going to die. Because even without knowing that there was a possible way for his body to be alive, Sarek went to Kirk looking for his contra. And as a result, it seems fairly obvious that this is a thing Vulcans do, just so that their loved ones, in this case parents, but it could also be wife, husband, children, whatever, have the living memories and living essence of that loved one. And it stays on with them even after the loved one is gone. And so, because he now Kirk, it seems like Spock left that behind in the hope that it would probably presumably get back to his parents, and so that they'd have a part of him left, which is why he did that. I doubt that Spock had any way of knowing that he was going to get it, that he was going to be shot onto the Genesis planet, and that he would be resurrected there, because it was a brand new thing. He probably had no way of knowing that was going to happen, anything at all. He was just saying, "I'm going to save the ship. It's more important," and the fact that, and I'll just leave my contra with Bones. They'll eventually talk to my father and figure out what it is, and he can have it back. I think that was pretty much the plan.
Yeah, which like I said, I could see that side.
Because they mentioned that.
I
They
just
mentioned
felt
that. Sorry, I was because they mentioned on Vulcan that ceremony to put Spock's mind back in his body was very, very rare and very, very dangerous. It's not something they do every day.
Yep, which I would make the case. Yeah, they mentioned that, but to be fair with this, like I said, I could see that side. I just felt the film made it seem like he only did it because he had an out and cheapened his death. And B, it's something that's very, very rare, really impossible to do, and something that people wouldn't often try. Isn't that exactly what Kirk's famous for? Hence why he passed the Starfleet test that no other officer did, because he finds a way around the impossible. In fact, he loves it, he relishes it, and he's doing it on a ship with Kirk. Come on.
Kirk is famous for cheating death.
Yeah, Kirk's famous for always trying to beat the odds. Like, if you put the odds in front of him, he deliberately sometimes tries to do it because he's that arrogant, which is part of the character, and it does work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he sees it more of a challenge to him, and I don't know why, but it works.
Yeah. Because he's Captain James T. Cena.
But yeah, I could totally see it both ways. I think they were going for what Jim said, the whole it's Vulcan tradition thing. But I think the way it came across was the whole, yeah, Spock only did it because he had it out, and somehow he miraculously knew that his body was going to survive, and therefore he would survive. That's the way it made it seem.
Yeah. Also, the cantina they go to for Black Market, like I mentioned last video, but I am aware that's been erased, is basically, it looked like the Star Wars cantina, which in itself is kind of hilarious that Star Wars has just been erased. It's almost like we're Disney. That has to keep coming up.
It does. Although I think this cantina did not have a cantina band, did it not?
I don't know if it had a cantina band, but you had to admit it did really look like the Star Wars cantina, and since this was made afterwards, you can kind of see they took inspiration from that.
Yes, yeah, you can see that. Oh, you think that took inspiration? Wait till we get to Star Trek V, The Death of a Franchise.
That would make the case. Why would anyone call it the death of a franchise when it has afterwards another 7 films?
True.
If anything, you could call Nemesis death of a franchise, because they literally had to reboot the whole series.
True.
But I still say this is worse than Nemesis.
Fair enough. But yeah,
Yeah, the Contra thing. Like I said, I
Yeah.
could see Jim's point. I could see Jim's point in case Jim thought we couldn't.
Which is fine, and I understand your point too. It does look really contrived, and that just did it because he could get out of it.
Yep.
I also have to say, can Klingons beam through cloaking devices?
Since the script said so.
Apparently, because when the ship is is in orbit around the planet. They're cloaked, and I can't remember the exact scene now off the top of my head, but they have to transport for some reason, and they transport while they're cloaked. I'm like, your power systems don't work that way.
They might do. It's the
that was when they transported down to the planet to capture the hostages.
Yeah, I was gonna say they might do, because wasn't there a problem with the cloaking stuff in the second film too? I believe there was some problem with the cloaking stuff on the second one, but as you and Jim had mentioned, there is ships that can do that in later on in Star Trek with the cloaking thing, and as real life does tell you, with any sort of thing to do with weapons, like if the police carry knives, the criminals get guns. If the police carry guns, the criminals get bigger guns. So it stands to reason that the criminals of Star Trek would have the same mentality and try to upgrade their ships beyond the actual Federation or police technology. I don't know if that's just a stupid way of looking at it.
No, that's a valid way of looking at it. But I'm just looking at it from the perspective of what's been established in Star Trek itself throughout the years of cloaking technology, even in Next Generation, which is the next century ahead of of this series of the original series, the original Star Trek. When ships are under cloak, they can't really do anything because of the enormous power drain on their systems. Like, they barely have enough power to keep like life support going and stuff, and their computers and their lights and stuff on. It's why when you're under cloak, you can't like go to warp, you can't use your transporters, you can't fire your weapons because there's a huge energy drain. And as we'll get to in Star Trek 6, the Klingons actually do have a ship that can fire while under cloak, but it's a prototype that promptly gets destroyed by the Enterprise. So the technology that was used in that ship is no longer available, and it doesn't become available pretty much for another like 200 years.
Yep. But to be fair, like I mentioned, this film clearly has no respect for what's already been established. So
true. Very true.
But
so
yeah,
Jim,
you are right. It also doesn't make sense, the police argument.
Yeah. Indeed. So Jim, since Molin's given his final thoughts already about the movie, he worked it in there. That was very clever, very well done, Mole. Touche. Jim, what do you think about this movie?
I like the movie, but it has problems. Overall, I admire the effort that was put into it. I admire what they were trying to do. I said I read some information that basically one of the problems that they were afraid the entire fandom would revolt against the franchise if Spock stayed dead because he was such a beloved character. So unfortunately, this is one of those Daniel Bryan moments where they were kind of forced into it because they don't understand what they want. But overall, I like the movie. It has some good moments in it. I like the moments where they're stealing back the Enterprise and they're going. That was really cool, adventure style. I like that. Mr. Spock sabotages the other ship. Mr. Scott sabotages the other ship. A lot of fun with that. The emotional, showing some of the emotional of Kirk losing his son, which was kind of interesting. The other stuff like that. There are some good moments in it. Christopher Lloyd was fun. He's a terrible Klingon, but he's good as Christopher Lloyd, so that's a plus, I guess. And yeah, this actress for Savick was much better than Kirstie Alley. No offense to Kirstie Alley. So yeah, overall, I would say I'd probably rate this movie somewhere about somewhere between a 6 and a 7. I would say out of 10. It's a decent movie. It's not the worst film I ever saw, but it has some issues in both continuity and in the message that it kind of contradicts. I should say it this way: taken with film 2 in comparison to the franchise, it's a 6 to 7. Taken as a movie by itself without consideration of previous films, you could probably bump it up to an 8 maybe, if you were lucky. But you kind of had to take over the previous films, unfortunately, so it's really like a 6.5 maybe. It's a decent movie, but it's got just too many issues that just kind of, especially if you're a Star Trek fan, they just draw your eye, they bog you down, and unfortunately, your mind just nitpicks it, and it's hard to enjoy. Although for what it was a decent movie.
Fair enough. Oh, another thing I should probably mention is the uniforms in this movie. They're slightly different to the Wrath of Khan ones. It's like they took the Wrath of Khan ones and then they remastered it for HD. Or as Mole put it while we were watching the movie, are those uniforms shiny? Because yes, the uniforms were shinier. They looked slightly newer, and they had like borders and outlines on a lot of the parts of uniforms.
They did.
Which I think it made it look better personally.
It made it look a little better. Probably made it look a little better, but yeah, like I said when we watched this, I was like, are those uniforms different? And like everyone said, no. It's like, yeah, look at the chest. It's shinier. The trim's shinier. And it was like, oh yeah, it is shinier. So it's almost unnoticeable, but yet when you notice it, you can't stop noticing.
Yeah. I can't unsee.
Yep.
Man, I do believe, and I could be wrong, we'll find out as we continue on and watch the other movies, but I think these are the uniforms they use for the rest of the movies.
Didn't you say that last time?
Well, it's the same design. I didn't realize they had actually put embroidery around it and made it shiny in this one. But I don't see, especially if these are supposed to be the upgrades of the last one, I don't see why they would change the uniforms for the subsequent movies.
True.
Especially the next one, considering it's supposed to be a continuation of this one. Although I did say that about this one to 2, because it's a continuation of 2 when they changed the uniform.
Yeah, like I said, they might do some minor upgrades, but yeah, they probably will keep them.
Yeah, but then for the next one, it doesn't really make much of a damn difference because they're going to spend about 2/3 of the movie in the past wearing civilian clothes.
This is true too.
Ah, cool. Do they team up with Enterprise?
Farther in the past.
Yes, if you have no follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Well, actually, technically speaking, they don't team up with Enterprise. They get assaulted by Enterprise. But we'll get to that in Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home.
To be fair, it's not Archer's crew or what the fuck his name was.
Nope. No. Mm-hmm. No.
All right, Jim.
Sorry.
But yeah, I thought the movie was interesting. It can't decide what it wants to be because in some parts, like with Christopher Lloyd and with some of the stuff they threw in there, it's a fun movie, but at the same time, it's also trying to be a serious and emotional movie, which during the emotional parts, it actually pulls off pretty well. The problem is a lot of the motivations behind the emotional parts are kind of contrived, like with the whole Kirk and his son thing. It's like, okay, I get that he's a son, but as Mole pointed out, he didn't know him for very long. There was like no connection there.
Yep, or really creepy with older woman hitting on child. Well, technically teenager, but I'd count as a child.
I don't know about that, because I was looking at that, I would say that Spock was probably right about somewhere between 17 and 20, which is illegal in most jurisdictions. And Savick herself is not that old. Savick herself is only in her 30s.
She's only in her 30s, but still, the 17 is still creepy.
Legal age, but yeah, my human standards
lean
still
forward. Lean forward, thank you. That was just loud buzzing again.
Yeah, really.
It must be my headset. But I'll have to, after this, I'll have to turn it off and turn it back on. But yeah, and then you have Chriz, who, I loved Christopher Lloyd as Chriz, but again, he was kind of fun as Chriz, and you could tell he was having a blast doing it, and he was just going balls to the wall and just, giving a balls to the wall Christopher Lloyd performance, which is great. The problem was he wasn't acting like a Klingon. He acted like Christopher Lloyd trying to act like a Klingon, which kind of didn't work.
To be fair, he wasn't as over the top as most of the Christopher Lloyd roles, or as good either.
True. Yeah, you could tell he was also trying to take it a little bit seriously, trying to portray the character properly, and I think that hurt the performance a little bit because it's If he's gonna have fun with it, let him go balls to the wall. Let him just go all out Christopher Lloyd on it.
Yeah, I'd say his performance was as good as a Klingon and as much of a merit on his entire career as Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin. Or Halle Berry as Catwoman.
I don't know if I'd say he was that bad, but yeah, he did a good job with what he had. He was no Klingon. And just there's just so many contrivances in this, and it's like it was all basically trying to come up with ways to get Spock back, and it half didn't work. However,
it's futuristic, and they wanted to go with the contour of the fuck it's called thing. Couldn't they have just gone a little? Yeah, this would be a little contrived, but not as bad. Couldn't they have found a way to like input his mind meld or whatever the fuck it's called into the computer and use that to build like a hologram like the Doctor in Voyager? Thus, you'd still get Spock, but he'd still be dead. It'd just be a new, more computerized Spock.
Yeah, but that would defeat the purpose of the Contra, which was be to get it to Sarek. I mean, what's Sarek going to do? Mind meld with the computer to get Spock out of the computer?
Yes, but to be fair, that's only the plot of this actual film. Like I said, because they made it up for the film, they could have made a way for them to have downloaded it into a computer and then made like a Jor-El or Doctor in Voyager style Spock. So you could always have him, but he'd be like, he wouldn't quite be the real Spock, and you could play on that. You could have Kirk even mention in a couple of films how he misses the real Spock.
True. I think their whole goal was to get the real Spock back because, as Jim pointed out, they were probably afraid of the afraid of the fan backlash, B, afraid of the Gene Roddenberry backlash, and C, with original Star Trek, there is no original Star Trek without Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. If you don't have the trifecta, you don't have Star Trek. And I think they felt that. They felt the pressures of that.
True, but I would also make the case Spider-Man 3, that's the reason they put in New Goblin, is they were worried about the fan backlash because of how much they built up Harry Osborn. So they said, well, the fans want him, let's give us New Goblin, and so good.
Ha. You say that like it's a bad thing.
It is a bad thing because Spider-Man 3 was not good.
The movie sucked, but the New Goblin was
good. He was okay. He had moments of just stupidness and plot convenience, but
True.
Which I understand the fan backlash may have been bad, but I still think they should have risked it, because if they'd made it good, the film could have been great. If they'd made it good and carried on with the death, I think if it was good and still felt like Star Trek, I think Star Trek fans would be mature enough to be able to actually watch it, not go, you killed my Spock, boo, I'm taking my ball and going home. Hashtag cancel my Star Trek network.
I could agree with that. But also, I think it was also, I would imagine it was also two other aspects of it. One was probably studio influence. Paramount probably said, thou shalt have Spock or thou shalt not have a Star Trek movie. Which, if the people funding it are saying you have to do this, you have to do this. The other thing is, look at who was directing it. I'm sure Nimoy himself said, I'm coming back. I'm going to be Spock. Fuck the hell off.
I'm pretty sure he's not that arrogant that he'd say, you have to bring me back, I demand it. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't. I mean, come on, he was a fun guy. However, the studio thing, I point you to Spider-Man 3. That's the reason Venom was in it.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, he's the reason Spock died in the first place.
Yes, but I'd put it to you, Harrison Ford even wanted Han Solo to die, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be arrogant enough to say, you must bring me back now. It's just a case of they wanted their character to die because they feel they've outlived it and they want to shine a light on the new people.
True. But yeah, I think it was more the studio than anything else. It was probably Paramount in their infinite paranoia basically saying, you will bring Spock back or you're not getting any money from us and you're not going to have a movie.
Yep.
So, and you see that even to this day in movies, with the studios influencing on movies. That's why a lot of the movies that have potential that could be great are half shit or complete shit, because
Oh,
the studios meddle, and the studios are like, you're going to do this, even though the directors and the producers are like, that's fucking stupid, but we
I
have to do it.
I agree. That's why, like I said, Venom.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, yeah, Spider-Man 3 wasn't good, neither Star Trek 3.
True, true. But, I would say don't avoid this movie, especially if you're watching all the Star Trek movies, if you've seen Wrath of Khan, and you plan to see like 4 and stuff, you kind of need to see 3 because it's part of the story, for better or for worse. There's at least a trilogy here, and if you can't just watch, it'd be like watching episode 4 of Star Wars and episode 6 and not watching Empire Strikes Back. It doesn't work that way. You have to watch Empire Strikes Back or it doesn't make sense.
To be fair, we haven't reviewed the next film yet. We haven't said if people should watch that one.
True, I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying if you are.
This film was so bad, it's like saying to people, well, you need to watch Phantom Menace.
No, it'd be like saying if people were watching Phantom Menace and watching Revenge of the Sith, basically saying, nah, you don't have to watch Attack of the Clones. It's like, yeah, yes, you do. You need to know what happens in that story to have the whole story make sense.
Sort of, though you can end it on the good part and be done with it. Saying you have to implies no, because that's just going to undo everything good about your other film. That's like saying, in order to watch the Christopher Reeve Superman films, may Christopher Reeve rest in peace, you need to see Superman Returns. Or Superman 3, or Superman 4. It's like, no, you don't. You can watch 1 and 2 and they're still good.
No, you don't have to watch Superman Returns because it'd be technically the last movie in the series. But this is the second movie in what would be a 3-movie trilogy in terms of story. So it like I said, it'd be like you kind of, if you're gonna watch the trilogy, if you're gonna watch that story arc, you kind of have to watch the middle of the story, or the story's not gonna make sense.
Yeah, but I was saying I didn't say people should watch the end of it. We don't know yet until we review next time. That one could also be horrible, but I was just making the case it's a continuation, as is Superman 3, which takes some stuff from the second film, and Superman 4 takes some stuff from the third one, and Superman Returns would try to retcon them. All 3 of those are terrible films. You would best be sticking to Superman 1 and 2.
True. I don't know. I would say give it a watch once if you haven't seen it. If you're like going through Star Trek movies and stuff and you want to get into Star Trek, you're going through the movies, give this a watch. It's not the best movie. It's not the worst that I've seen. I'd probably agree with Jim. It'd probably be hovering right around 6 out of 10 maybe. I would say, if you have the collection, watch it. Because like I own the collection. I think the collection is worth it to get. Just for the bonus features alone, and for the movies. I love the movies, all the, original movies. I really do. Well, don't love all the movies, but I do like all the movies, and I do watch them. My least favorite one is yet to come. But, yeah, if you're getting, like, the collection or whatnot, watch it. I think you owe it to yourself to watch all the movies in the collection if you have the collection, because I don't think they're that terrible. Certainly this one's not that terrible. Like I said, I had fun with this movie. I enjoyed it for what it was, contrivances and all, and the continuity errors and all. It was still fun, and I find it enjoyable to pick through that stuff. Sometimes that makes the movie enjoyable for me.
I will say, I am glad for the last couple you said, well, you need to watch these if you've got the collection. I'm so glad you said that.
Why?
Because I can't wait till we get to your least favourite one, or until we get to Nemesis. Because if you don't say it's worth watching because you got the collection, then it's like, what the fuck?
Well, if you bother to buy a collection of movies, I say no matter what it is, you owe it to yourself to watch every movie in that collection once.
See, I don't. It's like when I bought the Alien films. I liked Alien. It was pretty cheap to get the collection. I still don't want to go back and watch Resurrection again.
And that's why I only bought the first two and I didn't buy the collection.
Yeah, but the collection was actually cheaper than buying them separately. Or it's like it's like when we brought out a 2-disc set for Turbo and the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I'm only gonna watch Mighty Morphin on that disc. I don't want to watch the Turbo one.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, maybe that's just my personal philosophy, but I just feel if I'm gonna go through the trouble of paying money for a collection of movies, then I owe it to the filmmakers and the actors and actresses and stuff to at least watch each of the movies once.
Ah, so how have you got on with Incredible Hulk and Thor?
I haven't gotten to it yet, but I am gonna watch them. I'm just not gonna, because I heard they're actually pretty good, and I've actually seen part of Incredible Hulk. So.
Oh, I know those films are good. I like those films. I was just saying because it's like, well, it's my personal philosophy. If you've got it, you need to watch it. You've had those for over a year.
Yeah, well, I am gonna watch it, but yeah, but take a watch of Star Trek 3. You know, make your own decision of whether you like it or not, because I think this is one of those movies, contrivances aside, it's one of those movies that certain people are gonna like and they're gonna enjoy, and some people aren't, and it depends on how much the contrivances and the continuity errors will bug you, and how strongly you feel that this ruined the second one, and or how much you even like the second one, because for those who have seen our review of Wrath of Khan will know, yeah, we thought it was hugely overrated. It's a decent movie, but it's not anywhere near as it's not the best Star Trek movie ever made, as a lot of people say it is, at least not by our opinions. So, because of that, watching this movie, while it undid a lot of what the second movie did, it didn't, at least in my eyes, it didn't really ruin anything, because there wasn't much to ruin, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sort of. It still ruined anything that was good about it. And while we didn't like the second one, there was parts we liked, and this one undid every part we liked.
True. But yeah, take a watch. Take a watch for yourself and see if there's anything in the third one that you enjoy. Because as Jim and I have said, while we acknowledge the bad stuff about this movie, we did enjoy the movie, and it's still a relatively fun movie to watch. And the concept behind the movie, I actually enjoyed it. It was a pretty sound concept. It was just executed horribly with very little thought. And also, I believe, when we recorded this the first time, I believe, Mole, you also had a problem with the fact that they blew up the Enterprise.
Yep. But we'll get to that next movie due to the fact it's an entire Star Trek film without an Enterprise.
Oh, it has an Enterprise. It just doesn't have the Enterprise.
Yeah, which is stupid. You shouldn't do a Star Trek film without them.
True. I can kind of agree with that. But if neither of you guys have anything else left to say, then I will go ahead and take us out and say that was Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. Also, the Shadow's Maw tribute to Leonard Nimoy. May he rest in peace, and you will be missed, Mr. Nimoy. And join us again in a month's time for the next movie in the year Trek, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. Will they make it home? Find out. Have a good night, everybody.